Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And I'm going to go through some announcements really quickly, and then I have some really important information to share with you about colonoscopy and colorectal cancer screening. So first of all, conference, November 11th through 13th, coming soon, a few more tickets left. Some great speakers. Dr. Steve Keeby, who's a pediatrician. Not only is he a great pediatrician, gives a great talk about children's health and a lot of other related topics, but he is a fabulous musician, and he's going to have a little concert on Sunday morning before the formal session starts. John Abramson, the author of this book, Sickening, which we covered for advanced study this month, is also going to be speaking. This book, it's called Sickening, How Big Pharma Broke American Healthcare and How We Can Repair It. He's a Harvard medical doctor. He's on the faculty there. Really great book, and I'm very interested in hearing what he has to say when we hear him live. So that's in Columbus, Ohio, November 11th through 13th. Buy an in-person ticket and you get to take my long COVID workshop for free, which will happen after the first of the year. Some of you who are interested in healthcare careers, you can watch, by the way, the FOM, Food Over Medicine License Preview program at WellnessForumHealth.com. If you scroll down, go to WellnessForumHealth.com, scroll down to the bottom, there are two videos posted there. One is the FOM license preview program. The other one is the presentation that I give at our dinners in Columbus. So if you hear me talking about these, you say, gosh, I'd love to come, but I live in Idaho. You can go watch these videos on our website. So I'll direct you there. Don't forget about Optimal Health and Life with Pam, Part 1 and Part 2. I sell out Part 1 every year. I created Part 2 for the people who already did it. But here's the thing. Last year, I had enough weekends that I could offer an extra one to the people who got closed out of the first one. I don't have enough weekends this year, so 25 people, that's it. So get your spot secured. And we talk about, in the Part 1, we talk about time management, and we talk about how to organize your life around healthy habits and sleep and supplements and whether or not you should intermittent fast and what happens if you eat late at night and all kinds of stuff, right? In addition to the right diet and food prep, I even share my own food journals with you. Part 2, we talk about aging and cognitive health and hair, nails, and skin health. And it's an extension, it's a whole different subject matter. So if you're interested in that, let us know. Don't forget member orientation. If you're a member of Wellness Forum Health and you haven't done one of my tour of Wellness Forum and all the benefits that you get and how to use them, I do these. They're like a 45-minute sessions. I offer one in the daytime, one in the evening every month. So you've got that coming up. Feel free to let me know about that. And then careers in general. A lot of people are starting to think again about starting their own practices and all that kind of thing. And I'm getting some requests to do some intense, like get through a lot of material quickly programming, like toward the end of the year, beginning of next. So if you're interested in doing something in healthcare that's more productive than what you've been doing, you want to help people more, or you're not in healthcare and you're thinking there must be some kind of training program for me, well, the Food Over Medicine License program is something to look for, or look at, I should say, and you can go to Wellness Forum Health and watch the videos. Scroll down to the bottom, you'll see them there. So anyway, that's it. And then don't forget our fabulous food products. I eat them every day. I have my smoothie for breakfast. I use our brown rice vegetable soup as a base to make soup every week. I call it my kitchen sink soup. Everything goes in there but the kitchen sink. All the stuff that isn't going to last for a real long time goes into my, I add it to the brown rice vegetable soup mix. So anyway, if you want a catalog, let me know. All right. So I know I went through that really quickly. My email address is pampopper@msn.com if you want more information about any of this. All right, so now we're going to talk about colorectal cancer screening. So for a lot of years, I've been providing people with objective information about colonoscopy so they can make informed decisions about whether to agree to screening. And there are articles in our Health Briefs library, so if you're a member, you can go read these. Until just recently, there were no randomized controlled trials that evaluated the efficacy of population screening with colonoscopy for reducing the risk of colorectal cancer, death from colorectal cancer, or all-cause mortality. And from my standpoint, it's a little hard to fathom how an incredibly invasive and risky procedure could become a standard recommendation for all adults age 45 and older without any evidence showing that it was beneficial. But I mean, that is a question we should ask. But due to this state of affairs, the Canadian Task Force on Preventive Healthcare updated its recommendations for colon cancer screening in 2016, advising against it as a primary screening test due to lack of evidence. Now, one thing I have to point out to everybody is it's important to understand the difference between a screening test, population screening, everybody gets it, versus a diagnostic test. Clearly something's wrong. We have to figure out what it is. Well, after considering this information, it's not surprising that a lot of people have opted not to have a colonoscopy. I mean, the reason most people have regular screenings is because they've been told that doing so saves lives. But most people aren't given accurate information before screening that addresses the things that are most interesting to them, reducing the risk of death, and not just for the type of cancer that the screening test is designed to detect, but also all-cause mortality. There are risks associated with cancer screening, and these range from turning healthy people into sick patients to diminished quality of life or even death as a result of treatment. And these risks should be considered when making a decision about any screening test. A 2016 paper that looked at the results of the most commonly recommended cancer screening showed that none of them resulted in a reduction in all-cause mortality. In spite of this, during the last 15 years, the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force has increased the recommended options for colorectal cancer screening to include fecal immunochemical tests, or FITs, and blood-based cancer screening for methylated DNA. The USPSTF also expanded the recommended ages for colorectal cancer screening to 45 to 70 years, and previously it was 50 to 70 years. In 2016, the USPSTF evidence report stated that there were no colorectal cancer screening methods that reduce all-cause mortality. However, a reanalysis showed that flexible sigmoidoscopy slightly reduced all-cause mortality by 3 deaths per 1,000 persons screened. Another 2016 article concluded that while blood-based screening might result in more people being screened, in other words, it's a lot less invasive, and adherence to both invasive and non-invasive tests tends to be really, really low, these tests have very little utility. The manufacturer of one of the tests proposed including a warning with the test stating that a negative result, quote, does not guarantee absence of cancer and patients should still pursue other screening tests. And the translation to that, I think, of that is this test is useless and should never have been approved. But the FDA approves almost everything that the drug companies submit. Well, we finally have some good news for patients who are concerned about colorectal cancer screening and continue to struggle to figure out what to do as they try to reconcile the information like what I just gave you with the pressure they get from health professionals who say that screening is absolutely positively necessary. Well, we have the results of the first randomized controlled trial investigating colonoscopy available now. This study included over 84,000 subjects ages 55 to 64. The primary endpoint was risk of colorectal cancer and related death, and then the secondary endpoint was all-cause mortality. The study design was excellent. It resulted in almost complete long-term follow-up because of the use of unique personal identification numbers, which were linked to cancer registries and cause of death registries for all participants in every country. Here were the conclusions, and I'll just kind of tell you, risk of colorectal cancer. Well, in order to prevent just one case of colorectal cancer, 455 people have to be screened. Second point, risk of death from colorectal cancer. Risk of death was 0.28% in the colonoscopy arm, 0.31% in the non-colonoscopy arm. Not much of a difference. Point 3, risk of all-cause mortality, death from any cause. Risk in the colonoscopy arm, 11.03%, and the non-colonoscopy arm, 11.04%. In other words, if you sum all this up, colonoscopy made no real difference in outcomes. An intention to screen analysis was conducted, and it concluded that the risk of colorectal cancer for screened patients would be 0.98% compared to 1.20% in the usual care group. I mean, it's a tiny, minuscule difference, but even this risk reduction is not realistic, since the assumption was that for this analysis, everybody who's told to get screened would get screened. Well, the compliance rate is not everybody. It's 70% or less in the United States. Well, here's the deal. We now have data from a well-designed trial. Colonoscopy does not reduce the risk of colorectal cancer, does not reduce the risk of death from colorectal cancer or all-cause mortality. There are risks associated with the procedure that include perforation of the colon. And I think the fact everybody agrees that it's an unpleasant experience that involves drinking awful fluids to clean out the colon, taking time off of work or other activities for the procedure and recovering from it. And if you take all this into consideration, the average person, I think, would just say no. Now, a couple of comments I'll just make in response to all of this. Why is it that we don't insist on well-designed randomized controlled trials before screening programs are instituted? We've been offering all these various and sundry things for colorectal cancer screening, and people happily go along, live their lives, and think that they're going to save their life by doing these kinds of, agreeing to these kinds of tests, and it's just not true. Second thing, screening often turns healthy people into patients who don't benefit from medical intervention, and that's why the all-cause mortality angle of this is so very important. Many people, if they consider, even if they have a terminal cancer, they may not consider treatment, which completely diminishes the quality of life of the time they have remaining, to be beneficial. Many people wouldn't agree to it if they actually understood that. So we don't want to herd more healthy people being termed patients who don't benefit from treatment. And the earlier we detect this stuff, the more frightened people are about not cancer. And that's a different discussion for a different day. And the third thing is we spend billions of dollars on cancer screening tests every year, and we should allocate a lot of this money to teaching people how to prevent cancer and common degenerative conditions. I mean, prevention is the key. And of course, we need to treat people who really have cancer, but cancer is a very preventable disease for most types of cancer, for most people, if they know what to do. And we should be spending more money on that and less money on incessant testing. So I hope that that helps a little bit. What I'm going to do with this article, because it has a lot of references and data, I'm going to put it in next week's newsletter so that you can have it with the data. So if you're a subscriber to the newsletter, you'll have access to it. And if you're a Wellness Forum member, you can go read the things I've written about in terms of colonoscopy in previous years are all posted in the Health Briefs library, and you should have a passcode to get in there. All right, that's all for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy learning from it, and I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.